please. Focus up. There we go. I can't move around too much.
Gotta give it some caffeine so it can focus.
Do the double now. Because on. Oh yeah, there you go. I discovered
What a silly addition.
Right, but it's funny because I was FaceTiming with my parents at one point, and one of us just did a double thumbs up out of like some you occasionally do it, and then it like did the fireworks, and we were just playing with that for 10 minutes, and it was kind of fun.
And then it stopped being fun.
Yeah, exactly. And then it was like, okay, great. Some engineer spent weeks on this feature,
Mm-hmm.
and we used it a couple times. It was goofy, but it's so useless. It is not
Yep.
important at all. The classic issue of building features that nobody uses.
Yeah.
Or like Google,
hopefully we won't learn that.
Yeah.
Hopefully we won't experience that.
Hopefully. Anyways, hello everybody. Welcome to the end of August. I think originally we were planning to do these streams like the first Thursday, first Thursday.
We schedule them every 4 weeks, and sometimes there's a conflict, and so we push it back a week.
And then we push it back another week because
yeah. So if we do 10 in a year, I think I'm happy with that.
Okay. I think that's a good target. 80%, something like that ish. It's good.
10 out of 52.
10 out of 52. That's a lot of weeks. But also not that many when you think about it.
It's the age-old question. How many weeks in a year?
Some. The book that you had me read, Rocket Surgery Made Easy, I just started it while waiting. And like there's a couple of like cartoons in it and stuff, and they are all from like 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9 or whatever. And so I was already in the mindset of thinking about years and the fragility of time. So it's good to also talk about being late.
Yeah. Well, since it's, pretty much towards the end of the day, I'm going to grab a beer.
Okay.
So I'll be right back.
I don't have any to grab. So here's my metaphorical brewski. Anybody else hanging out? Hello, Colin. How are you? Who else is here? How has your language learning day been? Anybody have any stories of their language learning? Salud. Ooh, that is a good choice.
Sierra Nevada. It's great. Nice, refreshing pale ale.
I do miss West Coast beers, honestly. Not going to lie. It's good.
It's the best coast, I've heard.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely better than the East Coast.
Mm. That's the Beast Coast.
Oh. West Coast, West Coast, East Coast, Beast Coast.
Exactly. Which, I lived on the East Coast for almost 13 years, and it's definitely a beast of a coast.
I lived there for a grand total of 9 months. Although I'm going back there again for a family reunion in November in Georgia, I believe.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah. It's vaguely where my grandma lives-ish.
Okay.
But the family is sort of from a lot of different places, but that is a central-ish location for my dad's side of the family, at least.
Cool.
Definitely it's easy to say where my mom's side of the family is from. Oregon. Done. Dad's side of the family, it's well, you got to take into account, it's okay, they moved a lot. Grandma lived there for a long time. Now she lives in Florida. It's yeah.
My family's from all over the place, so people are where are your family from? I'm I don't know.
Do you have just a go-to answer when you have to answer something?
Not really.
No. It's too spread out. There's not even one where it's there was 2 years that we were from here.
I mean, my mom's side of the family is from Mississippi and Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
It's that's an area. My dad's side of the family is from Los Angeles and Buffalo, I guess.
Classically connected, close cities. Interesting. But anyways, should we talk about some language learning? What do you think?
We sure could.
We could. There's no questions in the Discord server. So if anybody in chat has language learning questions, you want to ask us something, feel free, pop them in the chat. I will read them, and we can to answer them just live.
Yeah. You want to talk a little bit about our current speaking boot camp?
Sure, because that's taking a ton of my time right now. It's my main
Yeah.
focus. But we launched this speaking boot camp to start live. So like it's not pre-recorded. It's an actual live course that we're running. Launched this week on Monday. We've had a couple of sessions already, and it's really cool. It's really been very fun to get back into the classroom, so to speak. It's not really a classroom, but like we're speaking with actual learners. They're submitting, like when they do chorusing or reading aloud, they've been submitting their audio. They did conversations and not conversations, like a first video of their speaking, shared that. It even inspired me to go back and look at my own recordings for my Spanish output in the beginning of 2023. When I'd basically first gotten here to Mexico City, I found some of those recordings and just posted those. So it's been a really, really cool experience. There's really, really great students going through it with a bunch of different languages.
Yeah.
And I just feel really, I don't know, feel very good, especially like to think about like, okay, all of my check time is at least helping other students in some way. It's only like 20 of them, but that is a start, and it feels really good to have, I think, added on to the Refold method in a way that is helpful.
I mean, we haven't done a live session since our first course, and we ran that 3 times, I think, before switching it to fully self-service.
Yeah, I think you're right. 3 or maybe 4. Like, I think 3. No, I think 3.
Yeah, 3. And like ever since, Ben has been like, we should go do that again. We should like definitely do live courses again. And I was always like, it's a lot of time out of the day. Like it's not as scalable. It doesn't allow us to focus on like building other things. But I think there's a lot of value in, I'm seeing so much engagement from this group because it's very small. It's only 20 odd people.
Yeah.
And so, you end up building a rapport with them, and they will build a rapport with each other. And there's like a sense of community around it. So over the past week, I've been, Ben has brought me to the light around like doing more of these in the future. Because even though, it's you got to keep the sizes small, so like everybody gets enough attention and it's not like this super scalable. I think that there's a lot of folks out there that don't want to do the self-serve or like purely on their own learning. They really want a community around them. So if we can provide that community, I think that'd be really valuable for the learners that want both peers to talk to and also coaches that can work with them throughout the process.
Because a lot of our method is very like sorry, that loud car just went by your
That was a motorcycle.
But a lot of our offerings have been very solo. Like you have to do it yourself. You have to figure out how it works for you. You have to adapt the Refold method. You have to do all this on your own. And so anybody that's like, I kind of just want to be part of a group that is all going on this together, that you can help me out, support me. I can have people there with me, and I don't have to do everything 100% on my own, is sort of missing, right? We have stuff that is in between-ish, but like there's not that full-on community that goes with you. And so I think that's definitely another really good positive coming from this, is seeing the benefit there.
Totally. Yeah, I'd definitely like to do more of them, because I think if we can really be the learner's partner as they go through the entire learning process, I think that is a really positive addition that we can make to their learning process, and also just to the community in general. So I'm definitely open to it. I think there's a market for it. We'll need to put up like a wait list so that people can sign up for future ones whenever we launch them.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to figure out exactly how it works in the future.
Yeah.
We've got lots of things that we can learn and tweak and try and probably fail and succeed hopefully too.
Yeah. I mean, it's great because I think that there's some folks in the community that like really can do it all themselves. But I think they're pretty few and far between. I think most people do better when there is a environment and a success environment and accountability and people helping. So,
yep, totally. We've got a couple of questions in the chat here. First one here from Eshin Singh. When choosing media to immerse with, how do you choose the right balance of difficulty versus interest?
That's a very personal question. Because some people, I mean, at the end of the day, interest is key. And the question is, are you more interested in something that is difficult, or are you more interested in something that is easier to understand? There's a sort of separate question of, because something can be easy to understand, but still very not interesting. And something can be hard to understand, but be very interesting. So you want to focus on interest as the first step. And then within that, say, of the things that I'm interested in, do I focus on things that are easier? Do I focus on things that are harder? And it depends on which activity. So we would normally say for definitely earlier, yeah, for interactive stuff, you can do much harder things because you have the supports of all the tools. For free flow things, it's much easier to do it with things that are more comprehensible because you don't have access to the tools that increase your, yes, yeah.
That's a big thing. It's if you are free flowing with a very difficult TV show where you understand him, of, it, why every couple of seconds, you're not really learning much. You can do so much more from either free flowing something easier that you already know, or by just doing more intensive or interactive immersion. They have a follow-up question there with, should they tackle harder material with intensive or free flow first?
Absolutely intensive. Yeah, definitely use intensive. Lookups will help you understand and get more out of it. If something is just not comprehensible to you, as Ben said, it doesn't provide a huge amount of value. Yes, there are certain things that you can do with that material that make it more beneficial, but at the end of the day, you're going to get more value if you understand more.
Yeah, especially as a beginner, I generally recommend a rough balance of 25% priming, so like learning new words, Anki, grammar, 50% interactive immersion of some kind, which is typically intensive, and then maybe 25% of easy free flow. So something that you already know, something you've already done intensive with, something you're familiar with, because putting on a podcast on your fourth day of learning is just going to be background noise. It doesn't really do much for you. But once you get into the intermediate, more advanced stages, that's where harder material that just takes more focus is actually quite beneficial. Listening to more difficult audiobooks or lectures and things like that in the target language, when you can understand and follow along, you can learn a lot that way without necessarily having to do interactive. You can still just pick things up from listening, from guessing, but it does take that focus. So hopefully that's kind of helpful.
Yeah, the last thing that I would add is if you are scared of doing something that's hard, or you hate it in the first half hour of it, that is likely just an issue of not being used to it. So I do think that a lot of learners give up too quickly when it comes to hard content, because you may find that after you've done, like, let's say it's a 10-hour series, or you may find that the first 15 to 30 minutes of that suck. But beyond that, once you get used to it, it's actually quite enjoyable. Same thing with like novels. It's really hard for me to get through the first 2 chapters of any novel, even in English, just because I'm not used to the story and the characters and the writing style. And so I generally say, if you're going to try to do something that is difficult and it's difficult and you're going to put the effort in to work through that, give yourself a little bit of time and forgiveness. Don't judge yourself so harshly for it being hard, because what you may find is that it's actually within your reach. You just need an hour of practice or 2 hours of practice, and then it's within your reach. Whereas on day one, it feels very out of reach. You don't really know until you've put in the effort to see, is this actually in my ability level or too far outside of it?
Cool. Thank you for the question. We got another one here from Colin. So I've been doing the Refold method since around November of last year. Congratulations on almost a year. And really leaning on Dreaming Spanish as their method of getting comprehensible input. But they're finding that breaking into intermediate from... there's a second message. I'm finding that breaking into advanced from intermediate is kind of tough. Is that natural, or how do I adjust my approach to better break into more advanced Dreaming Spanish content?
I'm assuming it's their categorization system of what's intermediate to advanced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, in an ideal world, you would have the like perfectly smooth comprehension ladder of every step is just a little far outside of it. But in reality, that doesn't exist for any language. Mm-hmm. Spanish is one of the better ones. It does actually have enough content to almost have that smooth onboarding, and Dreaming Spanish has been key to actually creating all of that content. But the reality is that there's still going to be gaps or chasms that you have to jump over and work through. And so if you are feeling like you're ready to go to the advanced level, but the advanced level feels too hard, going back to my answer for the last question, I think it's really important to understand that you should expect things to be hard when you first get into them, but that doesn't mean that they're outside of your ability level. It just means that you haven't actually built up or filled in enough of that chasm to make it part of your ability level. And that may only take, if you're already at intermediate and you're trying to get to advanced, it's probably not that big of a gap, and you only need a couple of hours to really close that gap. But one of the things that I actually disagree with about Dreaming Spanish is they're very focused on like just using comprehensible input and just going through this content ladder. But it is much easier to bridge those gaps when you're using outside supports, whether that's Anki or sentence mining, or interactive lookups, whatever tools you use in order to bridge that gap. I would highly recommend using those in order to make that process easier, and then dropping them once you feel confident.
Yeah, to add on to that a little bit, I've recently gone back and looked at a couple of advanced videos from them, and they are still very slow and pretty not artificial necessarily, like they're super fake, but like they don't sound like regular everyday Spanish. And so there's still a lot of, I would say, low-hanging fruit from normal everyday Spanish, like even just getting used to speed that you can gain from other things, because you said that you've been mostly using Dreaming Spanish. And so if you do expand a little bit and go to YouTube or to TV shows, you will also pick up a lot more that will make the advanced stuff, which is still very useful because they do go a little slower. You can be you can follow words more specifically. You can pick things up more easily, but having just a wider skill set will make that part easier. And so I would, if you're really struggling at the jump there, I would say to jump into something that's way harder, like a TV show, and learn from that. Get used to the tools, and then try to go back to it, because I think there's so much value you can get from regular Spanish language content. Plus, there's so much of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's value in sort of, I think Lamont called it setting a new normal, where you push yourself really, really hard to do like a really, really hard thing. And then when you come back to the easier thing, it just feels much easier than it was before.
Sure.
I think the example he gave is like, if you want to wake up every day at 6 a.m., try waking up at 4 a.m. for a while. And then 6 a.m. feels super easy.
I was getting up at like 5 for like a whole year to get my check time in. And now I get up at 6, and I can hardly even sleep past 6:30.
I know.
And like a couple years ago, it was like I would easily sleep till like 10 if I didn't set an alarm. But now
yeah, I very similarly, like I spent a good 6 months waking up at like 4:35 every day, and now I just like regularly wake up at 6 without an alarm.
Yeah.
Anyways, but so I think going really, really hard. If you're going to do that, I would actually recommend doing repetitive listening. So if you're trying to get used to speed, taking like a short, let's say a 10-minute YouTube video, and really like working through it and trying to improve your ability to hear everything and like really understand everything, that exercise will make all other slower Spanish much easier.
Which we call intensive listening often. Or
Yeah.
there's also like a sub one, which is listen looping, where you basically do that same thing, but you did take specific ones. I believe both of those you can find in the Refold app now in the Learn tab. Or for intensive listening specifically, I do have a tutorial on that.
Yep.
So there's some techniques you can use.
I think there's also a question. I don't know if there's details in the question of like what specifically they're struggling with, because it actually isn't clear whether they're struggling because they don't have enough vocabulary or because they don't have the listening capability. And obviously, like listening capability, listening to something really hard and mining it and listening to it intensively will build that up, but it won't improve your vocabulary. So if they're just talking about things or using words that you don't know, that is best supplemented with onti and sentence mining.
Totally agree. Yeah, I know I'm a little quiet, but my microphone literally doesn't go louder.
We've been having issues with Ben's audio setup.
I don't get it, honestly.
And now you're very quiet. Now I can't even hear you.
What? I didn't check. It's the same. I
Can't hear you at all. Oh, now you're super loud.
Oh, I am?
Yeah.
Because I turned it all the way down, my gain all the way down, and I put it back to exactly where it was at the start of the stream. And now it's different.
Turn it off and turn it back on again.
I guess. So this is okay. Is this a decent?
Yeah, now you're like very loud.
Oh, but like
you're much louder than. No, you're fine.
Okay.
But definitely substantially louder than you. Like I'm going to turn down my audio on my end.
Okay. I think that's a good thing, probably.
I think so. I was maxed out. So.
Okay, great. Yeah. So when in doubt, turn it off and on again.
Amazing how that works.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So we love technology. Anyways, Fisho asks, when people say don't read early, don't read early on in the process, are they generally talking about pure reading or reading subtitles?
They're generally talking about pure reading, like reading books. I think it's actually a fair critique. There is a camp that says like you should read early and often because that it's the easiest way to acquire vocabulary. But when you don't have the sound system of the language yet, everything that you're reading is being pronounced wrong internally because you just don't know how the language is pronounced. So I think there's a very fair criticism that you shouldn't do pure reading early in the process, which is why we recommend doing reading and listening simultaneously. I recently saw that the Migaku folks call that hybrid input now, which is actually not a bad terminology for it. We call it multi-channel input originally.
Hybrid works.
But yeah. The multi-channel of having both the text and the audio at the same time will help you to connect what the text sounds like to what the language actually sounds like. Because the text of a language, the written version of a language is a
representation. It's not a perfect representation.
It does not contain everything about the language, right?
Yeah.
It's
a different version of the language, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's a different version. It doesn't have all the information that you would expect from the language. Those who study a dead language, they don't actually know how it's pronounced back in the day. They're like, people will try and figure that out, and then you can like try to align to it. But we really don't know because the information is just not stored in the text. So if you try to do pure reading early on, you are missing a huge portion of the language, and languages are inherently originally spoken and not written for the most part. So if you are missing out on such a key piece of the language, you're going to end up with weird artifacts in your ability. That's not to say that reading is bad. It's just that there are downsides to doing it before you've acquired the sound system of the language.
And I would say, actually, there's plenty of things about reading that are very good, which is why we recommend doing the listening plus reading, right? That hybrid input is very useful because, yes, you do learn words faster. You have your adult brain that can process the text, the stuff that you see. You can connect that with what you're hearing, and you can you can look things up quickly and easily. So there's a lot of benefit that you get from that kind of reading, but you do really want to combine it with the text because, like exactly what you said.
Yeah, there's definitely a camp out there of listening first, listening only, but it just makes it so much harder. Like the onboarding into the language is so much more difficult if you're just doing listening. So the hybrid approach of reading and listening simultaneously is our compromise for getting the benefits of reading without the downsides of pure reading and with some of the benefits of pure listening.
Totally. And something I think that also is easy to forget about, like we say, start reading and listening early, is that once you get into more later stages of the process, we generally recommend that you do mostly listening or pure reading. Like you start to split off and you get a lot more listening time. And so if I look at my time with Czech, for example, on the handy dandy Refold app, like my actual time spent, it's not going to focus on my phone, but the actual time
you might have to hold
listening,
it back by your head.
Yeah, but then if you can't see it.
Yeah, it's too bright.
Yeah. Fix your app, Ethan.
You gotta
see it on
that's not my fault.
Have you tried to fix it? Huh?
I have not.
Exactly. We need a giant text version so I can show on screen.
Once the web app has all of the things that you need, then you can just share it on screen.
Yeah. Anyways, my point is that my actual listening time just dwarfs my reading time.
Yeah, I'm here. I was looking today, like 48% of my time is low attention listening.
I'm not that bad, but my biggest thing is free flow listening. I actually focus on my Czech.
Yeah. Though we have our whole debate about what is low attention versus free flow,
which we figured out. We had a discussion about it.
We resolved it. We just haven't actually put it in the app yet.
That's a strong use of the word we.
We have not prioritized putting it in the app yet.
I think we should.
Yeah. Hey, I asked, what are the priorities for the app on Monday? You didn't mention it.
It's like, you're right. All right. That's on me. That's on me. So thank you for the question, Fisho. Here's one from Fabi. How do you guys train the subjunctive in Spanish? I know that noticing it is important, but I feel like I do that and I make progress with it, but there are some trickier structures that I still struggle with. Any advice?
Yeah. I think the subjunctive is actually worth studying. The way the subjunctive is explained in traditional classrooms, I think is completely useless. The best explanation that I found was a video of a guy just talking about subjunctive triggers of these structures in the language, these like words like para que trigger the subjunctive. And it's not like there's no rhyme or reason. There's no like, oh, it's a hypothetical. And so I'm sure there is, but like the way that it's explained in traditional classrooms is like, oh, it's a hypothetical or like a desire state, but that doesn't actually reflect what the subjunctive is, because there are plenty of times that you could say hypotheticals and desires without using a subjunctive.
Right. That can't use the subjunctive even.
Or can't, exactly. Yeah. So I think it is much more useful to identify what are the triggers that like just trigger the subjunctive to be used in that context. I think that is a much more useful way to study it.
Mm-hmm. And then you can just, you rep it. But I think the biggest sort of tip, even for any grammar that I can give, is that it's really best to study it a lot more deeply and specifically once you already can understand all of the example sentences, you get what it means, but you just don't really fully get how it's used or the exact nuances there. But trying to study something like the subjunctive when you're also trying to learn the words that they're using in the example, it's just going to be a huge headache, and you're going to feel defeated. And so if you can get to the point where you understand things and you're understanding the subjunctive, you're like, okay, I get what you're saying there. I understand that, but why exactly do you have to say que tengas un buen día and not que tienes un buen día? And then in that case, it's basically like, oh, that's just what you say.
Yeah. I remember there was a video, I think her channel is called Pelirroja, where she's her mom is Mexican, her dad is US. She like spent a lot of time actually like learning Spanish, and she was in her Spanish class and came home with homework, and was asking her mom for help with homework, and was like, why does this trigger the subjunctive? And her mom was like, because it sounds better. And he's like, no, like there's like a logic, there's like a reason. He's like, okay, because it sounds better.
That is true. There is a lot of things that just stick, that even like word order things, right? We don't say pepper and salt chips, even though like that's perfectly logical. Why wouldn't you? But you would never go, it's like, hey, pick me up some pepper and salt chips, please.
Yeah.
Like, who are you? What planet are you from? And there's so many things like that that are just like,
just how you say it.
Yeah.
So my recommendation would be like, go look up the subjunctive triggers, because then you'll know what to look for in your immersion. There's not that many of them. There's only like 10. So like spend an hour looking them up and then go out and look for them in the world. You'll see them everywhere. They're used constantly.
And I think something else that causes the subjunctive to feel more difficult than it necessarily might be is that it's something that just completely doesn't exist in the same way in English or in other languages. And I've seen this like with Czech as well, where there's these concepts that millions of people use in the language every single day to express their thoughts and things, and they work just fine. But as a learner, it feels like you're trying to solve some big puzzle and understand how this complicated piece of grammar functions, that you can use it accurately. But it's really just there to express ideas and to express things. And so I think people can very easily get caught up in trying to understand that logic, that why is it like this? Even though the people that actually use it every day completely fluently and functionally never think about that.
I would not consider it a logic problem. Like that's the way it's taught. I do not think you should consider it a logic problem at all. It's really just about how is the language normally used. And the subjunctive triggers are like a very easy way to get 80% of subjunctive usage down pat. And once you know the triggers, you know what to look for. And once you know the triggers and you've practiced them speaking them, you know how to use them. It just becomes like that eliminates 80% of your problems with subjunctive. Then there's like random situations where like it can go either way, where like it's a choice, it's a stylistic choice, and those are like much more complicated.
It's also annoying when they're dialectical. There's some that are like a choice in Mexican Spanish, but like not a choice in Colombian Spanish, and never used in X. It's like, why?
Yeah. So 80-20 principle, like you can nail down the 80% of it with just a quick 1 hour study session. And the other 20%, I just wouldn't worry about it until you're trying to like really master the highest levels of the language.
Thank you for the question, Fabi. Hope that was helpful. We've got a question here from Mena. What is the strategy for learning more vocabulary while already living abroad, in this case, Canada? They're learning English. They've been working there for 6 years in the IG area, but they still just translate everything in their head. Nothing feels very natural or comfortable, I think.
Okay. So there's two questions there. One is about growing vocabulary, and the other one is about translating in your head. So the growing vocabulary one is relatively straightforward. Reading is really helpful. Reading and sentence mining are the best ways to grow vocabulary quickly. You want to make sure that you're learning vocabulary that's actually natural, or not natural, but like relevant to your life. So, if you, for say, like worked in a restaurant and you want to learn like all the restaurant terms, then literally going through a cookbook and learning all of the different names for all the different foods and all the different herbs and spices and
oregano.
Yeah, exactly. Like that is honestly the best thing for you to mind, because it's directly relevant to what you want to talk about on a regular basis. It's not a traditional like novel that you're reading, but it'll teach you all the vocabulary that you need for the thing that you're working on.
Just side note,
go ahead.
If you want a very good cookbook that does actually have like a how to cook sort of thing, salt, fat, acid, heat is acid heat, not head. Is I think probably my favorite cookbook. It's also a good Netflix series, but her book is very, very good. and has tons and tons of cooking vocabulary.
There you go.
I
Do
know all
you
of
have one in
them.
Spanish?
I don't. I wonder if I don't even know if it actually has a Spanish version. Sal, grasa, ácido, or and then. Okay, just brings up the English version. So, oh yeah, it does. There is a Spanish version. That'd be cool.
There you go.
Anyways, sorry. Yeah, but targeting texts or things or YouTube channels or videos that are about the thing that you want to learn words in. So they say they work in IT, and so finding English-speaking YouTube channels that just talk about so much tech and coming across new words and going, what does that mean? I'm gonna look it up. Is really, really helpful. Very powerful.
Yeah. Or read Cryptonomicon.
Yeah, do that. I don't know what that is.
It's a famous book in the tech world.
Okay. It sounds like
it was okay. I thought it was fine. I don't know what the hype was about.
Probably because it has a cool name.
It does have a cool name.
And it's like when you have it on your shelf, you're like, I've read the Cryptonomicon.
Yeah.
You just sound cooler, right?
I mean, it has a lot of like cryptology in it and like code breaking and anyways, not relevant.
Breaking the law, breaking the code.
Anyways, but the second part of that question was translating in your head. And that is not actually a issue of vocabulary. Even if you have all the vocabulary you need, you might still be translating in your head. And there's not like one simple answer for how to stop translating in your head. It is a process that you have to work through. One of the challenges is that if you've learned a language through traditional methods, then they taught you to translate in your head and they had you practice translating. And the entire traditional education system around language learning is translation based. And so it's not surprising that when you practice translation for hundreds of hours, that is the way you naturally speak the language. There's some hypothesis that if you just do that enough, eventually it goes away. That was not my experience. I did not get so good at translating that I eventually stopped translating, because that doesn't actually make sense to me. So that's one of the reasons that we really focus on these input-based approaches, because what we're really looking for is mimicry, where when you're growing up, or honestly now, if you go and hang out with a new group of people that has new slang or talks about new things or has different mannerisms, you'll naturally pick those up. That is just normal human nature. So we want to replicate that with a new language. So if you're learning English and you're living in an English-speaking country, it is easy to surround yourself with English, and I would recommend doing that. And don't just try and translate things. You really want to look for the way that people actually express ideas and just imitate them. And if you imitate them and you put on this act of like, I'm becoming a character of this language or in this language, it ceases to be, I'm trying to translate who I am into a new language. It is, no, I have a new persona, a new character that is 100% in this language. And people often talk about how they actually have different personalities in different languages, because it is easier to embody a native speaker than it is to try and convert your base language into your target language as a personality. I kind of rambled there.
Yeah,
so.
You done there?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay,
go.
Cool. Yeah, so I guess the things that you can do are to spend a lot of time with English speaking content, with English media, understanding it, looking things up, being in the language. Yeah, you're already in Canada, and so maybe finding groups of friends that do just speak English with you to hang out, even if you don't fully understand everything, like trying to be there, be present with them. They'll teach you a bunch of things without even trying. Don't ask them to be your English teacher. Just be in English, and you will stop translating as you become more comfortable, as you understand a lot more fluidly and fluently. But you have to put yourself in those scenarios, especially online and at home when you have plenty of free time, or maybe to like watch TV shows and movies. Don't do a ton of Spanish assuming I think your native language is Spanish because you said Canada. So don't just go back to Spanish all the time. Keep yourself in English and absorb it and enjoy it, I guess.
Yeah. So seconding that, like if you surround yourself, if you spent like 30 days of I'm not going to watch any Spanish content or read any Spanish content, I'm just going to do everything in English, that will flip a switch in your head to be in English mode. And that's a really powerful thing to experience, because
like beast mode.
Then things just kind of become much more natural. And this has happened to me when I've done like really intense Spanish sessions where I've just been like 12 hours of Spanish every day for a week or two. And just like Spanish is the first language that comes to my tongue. It's not English, because when you surround yourself with it, you want to imitate it. That's just a natural human desire. So one thing that I will say, though, is that all of this assumes that you already have a pretty decent base level in English, that you can already speak and understand. If you don't yet have that, then definitely spending the time building vocabulary, listening a ton, really trying to comprehend the language and consume all that content, learn to understand it. And then that will prepare you for going out and being very social and imitating native speakers.
Cool. Thank you for the answer. We got a question here from Leo. Can you refold your way to beginner level travel Chinese if you're leaving in 2 months, but you have a lot of free time? Refold is the only method that they've really enjoyed, and so they're going to be doing it anyways, and then also adding on some Pimsleur. But basically, I think how would you tweak it to focus on that sort of more of early output stuff and travel level ability in 2 months?
Yeah, so you can't get to a place where you have a natural instinct for the language in 2 months, especially with a language like Chinese. That's just not feasible. Where I would say what still does work is building vocabulary and training your ear to understand the language. I think Refold methodology works perfectly fine for both of those. I wouldn't really tweak much about those except choosing much, much narrower domains. So with the current with like normal Refold, you just follow your interests and do whatever. I would highly recommend just narrowing your focus to the things that are most common. So if you're going to be a tourist there, then common foods, asking for directions, casual conversation, street talk, those are all the things that I would focus on. I wouldn't try to like read books or college level materials or math or anything like that.
Wait, that's not what you use for your travel scenarios?
Not usually, no.
Oh.
So I would just narrow the domain a lot, do the same
I would just
vocabulary
study
and
street
listening
food
building.
terms.
Street food terms works.
100% of what my immersion. Like, I just want to know all the foods that I need to try.
Every food ever.
God, that'd be great.
So do that. But then the piece that would be very different is practicing speaking. You have to use the stuff in order to be able to use it on the street. Pimsleur will give you some level of ability, but I would also recommend doing the more formulaic approach of think up like 100 things that you want to say in the language and make sure you know how to say them without needing to translate. Just like you just know the direct translations, not direct translation, know the correct thing to say for that sentence.
Yeah. Because
having a repertoire of useful sentences that you can use on the street will make your travels much, much better. And even if you just have to like straight memorize them with Anki, that will make your experience better. It's completely different than our normal conversation. No.
But if you want to order something and ask where the bathroom is and whatnot, you absolutely can do that and potentially understand the response, even if you don't get everything. You're like, to the left down there. You go, great, thank you. Even though you're like, I don't know what the first part was at all. And that's totally fine.
So Refold for building vocabulary and building listening ability. More Pimsleur, fluent in 3 months, sentence memorization for just having the repertoire that you need for traveling.
We also have an early output guide.
We do, actually.
Do we sell that? Is that a product or is that a thing?
I don't even remember. I remember, like,
God, we're so
not
good at
really.
this job.
Yeah, I don't actually remember. I don't even remember who wrote that on the team.
It was mostly me and Clayton.
Okay.
I don't even know where it is though.
It was not one of our better sellers, so I think we also like don't really care that much about it. So
yeah, it was mostly made to like slot into some coaching stuff that Clayton was doing, I think.
Yeah, we had a bunch of clients who had similar situations where they wanted to or they needed to speak early, and so we just like wrote the guide as like, okay, here's how you would do it.
Yeah. I don't know. We should find where that is at least. And maybe make it free, put it in the app or something like that. Yeah, but if you
Sure,
download the app, you can have it. That's the law.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we could just put it into in the Quickstart guides.
Yeah.
Just be like, hey, like if you need to speak early and you don't want to follow this whole process, here's the guide for that.
Is it on Notion? I bet it's on our Notion page somewhere.
Yeah. We'll find it later.
Yeah. There's another question. Okay, that one from Leo. Thank you for the question, Leo. Magnets. I've only listened for a year. How do they work? But since adding subtitles recently, my listening has gotten worse. Subtitles feel like a double-edged sword because with them I can understand quite a lot, 80%. But the things I could hear before, I struggle to hear now or pick out without subtitles. It's not really a question in there. I think it's just a statement. But I think what they're asking is, how do you not do that? Or how do you do this better? Or learn faster?
I mean, if you can understand 80% of something with subtitles, you're probably ready to move on to an intensive listening process.
But it says they've only listened for 1 year, but since adding subtitles recently, my listening has gotten worse. Which is the opposite of generally what we'd recommend and expect. But what I think is happening is that they have the subtitles on now, and they got really used to understanding the language, or trying to understand the language without the subtitles. And now that they can see what's being said, one, it's drawing their attention away from their listening, and they're sort of following the text a bit more. And two, they're probably realizing some of the things that they're missing a bit, and seeing like the words that they don't know and being like, oh God, I don't know that word, even though like the rest of it they do know. Like they said, 80% they do understand. And so they might be focusing more on that and feel like that's drawing away from their listening. And then the last thing that I was going to say was, and they're probably noticing the difference between what's spoken and what's exactly written, which is probably throwing them off a little bit as well. Because very, very, basically all of the time, subtitles are a shortened version. Like they don't put in like the repeats of words. It's more of like what you see written in the dialogue, like of a script or something like that, versus, and sometimes they'll change it to fit on the screen and whatnot. So
the reverse is also true, where like many times when people speak, they will just drop words that are irrelevant or not necessary, but will be included in the subtitles.
Yeah, or they're like not often said in the spoken language. And yeah.
So yeah, I don't fully understand the situation. So it's kind of hard for me to opine on it. So if you've got more information, drop it in the chat. I'm happy to respond to it, but I'm not 100% sure what the history was with doing listening for an extended period of time and then adding subtitles later. Or if you were using subtitles and then dropped and then came back to them. So yeah, I don't really want to.
All right, we got another question from Steve.
Okay, great. Sounds good.
If you had to study Spanish in school, probably in the past. If you had to study Spanish in school, but you also wanted to learn with the Refold or sort of input method, how would you go about minimizing potential damage from traditional study?
I wouldn't worry too much about damage. I think this concept that you're going to permanently damage yourself is not a particularly useful or healthy one. What we're trying to get at is that the reason there is damage to begin with is because you are trying to use a language that you have no familiarity with. And if you are, and like I've said before, like we are trying to imitate the way that natives speak. But in a traditional classroom, that is not the way they teach. They try to give you translation and then you just try and speak it. But because you've never heard the language as it's actually spoken, you don't put yourself on mute. Okay. If you've never heard the language and you don't know the way it's spoken, then basically everything that you say is going to be wrong in some way. It may be grammatically correct, it may be the right words, but the way you say it is going to be wrong because you have no frame of reference. You are coming from a different language. And so it is obviously not going to sound like a native speaker. And if you repeat that process without ever listening to native speakers and without ever like really learning what the language sounds like, and you repeat that over and over and over again, you will solidify all of these mistakes that you are making. The way that we prevent that is by exposing ourselves to the language. So as long as you are spending a lot more time listening and reading and seeing how Spanish is actually spoken, there's probably not that much damage that's ever going to happen in the classroom because you're only in the classroom an hour a day, whereas you could be doing 2 or 3 hours a day of listening, reading, whatever else. And I think what you'll find is that you don't really need to prevent things in the classroom because the work that you're doing with immersion methods will make your classroom time much, much more useful. And I think there was a high schooler that sent us a message, I think like last year, where they were using Refold and they were in their Spanish class and they did their final presentation. And the teacher was like, wow, that is the best presentation I've ever seen in this class. It's entirely in Spanish. Is because the classroom gives them an opportunity to like practice what they're learning, but the core fundamentals are all learned outside of the classroom. And so I wouldn't worry too much about like causing damage to yourself. What I would worry about is just getting exposure to the language and spending time outside the classroom to really build up the skills that you need to be successful both in the classroom and beyond it.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the answer, Ethan. Joshua asks, how much of my time should I spend on Anki? Currently, I spend an hour on Anki and 1 hour of active immersion. Is that a good mix?
It's a lot of Anki. I think we normally say like if you're going to do an hour of active immersion, then half an hour of Anki would be the sort of recommended amount, recommended maximum.
Yeah, we generally recommend that you try to hit about 25% of your time as Anki at the most. You can do less. But if you're at the very beginning of your journey and you know no words, doing a little bit more is totally fine, even up to 50% until you know a couple hundred words at least. But once you pass that, once you're doing an hour of Anki and then only another hour of immersion, you're just not giving your brain enough time to really slurp in the language from the immersion. You are sort of filling it with a lot more material that it's not going to be able to use yet. And so reducing your Anki potentially and doing more immersion, one will make your Anki easier. And two, I think you'll feel much faster progress with those words because there's less stuff going on in your head.
Yeah, it's really hard to absorb a lot of words. So I don't know how many new words per day they're doing, but at an hour a day, I'd probably say it's probably 15 new words a day. It would be my guess.
It depends on the language and their aptitude for Anki and
there's lots of variables there, but 15 would probably take me about an hour a day. And at least in my experience, my brain just does not want to absorb that information. Like Anki is basically a brute force method for trying to force information into your brain that it otherwise would not consider valuable to remember. The key to making it easier is making the information valuable to remember. And the way you do that is through immersion. So if you can make it valuable to remember, your brain will have a much easier time absorbing that. and it will give you additional repetitions through natural immersion. So depending on where you are in the process, I would probably recommend reducing Anki time to 45 minutes or lower, or maybe even half an hour, and then just taking that time and putting it towards interactive immersion.
I like your way of phrasing that very simply. Anki is for jamming your brain with information that it generally wouldn't consider useful. And so you got to make it useful with that immersion time. I think that's a good way to think about it, because a lot of people, I feel, have the wrong idea that Anki is how you learn words. Anki is how you memorize things. Memorizing is what you need to do to learn words. It's just a first step in a much longer process. And so most of the actual learning happens in your immersion outside of Anki.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's a first step and it's a supplement.
Yes. Miguel asks, ¿podría Ben hacer un video hablando español? Como nativo del español, me encantaría saber qué nivel ha alcanzado Ben. I've done a couple.
Podemos hacerlo. ¿Quieres hablar en español?
Sí, ok. Ya he hecho algunos videos en español. Creo que hice una entrevista con Mr. Salas hace varios años ya. Y creo que también he grabado como un video de cómo aprendería el español si tuviera como algún accidente del cerebro y se me olvidara todo. Pero solamente hablo un poquito en este video. Y recientemente creo que no tengo nada, pero técnicamente también tengo algunos videos hablando solamente en español para practicar. De hecho, hoy me topé con algunas grabaciones de 2023. Yo practicando mi español, haciendo clases, haciendo chorusing, haciendo como lectura en voz alta. Entonces, pero vi como que soy mucho mejor ya ahora. Y
espero que sí.
Sí, espero. Eso,
después de tanto tiempo en México.
Después de ya casi 3 años viviendo en México, usando español todos los días, literalmente todos los días, siento que sí he mejorado un poquito. Pero bueno.
Sí, creo que sí.
Jasser, that's a cool name, has asked, I've only been learning English for a year and 8 months with Anki and movies. I understand about 80% of everything I see. Man, that's really good. When I start talking, I forget the words. What do I do? Join our speaking bootcamp. Don't worry.
So when you are learning vocabulary for the purpose of comprehension, it's one direction, right? It is see word, understand. Going the opposite direction of think a thought, say a word is a different muscle. You will get some of that for free. Some of that will just happen naturally. But the immersion process does not remove the need for actually practicing things. It does not remove the need for practicing the language. You don't just magically become high-level fluent the first time you speak. So there are a couple different ways to tackle this. One of them is start doing production cards instead of comprehension cards or recognition cards, meaning that you're going from idea to usage of the language. So that's one approach. The other approach is, if you're ready for it, going to do all the activities that we recommend in the Speaking Bootcamp and also in our phase 4 in the Quickstart guide. There's lots of different things you can do. There's chorusing, chorusing, parroting, speaking alone, speaking with a partner, free flow writing,
reading aloud.
So, reading aloud. There's the physical portion of getting your mouth to move in the right way, and then there's the ideation of what you're describing of I forget the words, where you go to say something and then there's a blocker. Forgetting the words indicates to me that you just haven't actually really absorbed them. Normally the problem is that
there's an activation process.
Absolutely. There absolutely is an activation process.
I started like thinking about this a while ago, but there are levels of learning a word. Like there are definitely different like levels of learning a word, and the input side of learning a word, like being able to understand the word, doesn't necessarily perfectly align with being able to use the word. And so the levels that I generally have written out, that I haven't gone back to this thing that I was writing a while ago, are that you very basic is that you start with just exposure to the word. You just see it. That's it. But then you start to recognize it. Then you can start to recognize it and go, okay, that must then mean sort of that recognition plus. And then you eventually get into recognition and you can kind of understand it, but it takes a second. Then you can understand it. And then you can just effortlessly, perfectly easily understand it without even thinking. But then there's also the output side, which can start kind of in the middle of this process. You don't necessarily have to wait until you can effortlessly understand a word to be able to use it. So somewhere in there, you can start to produce the word, but slowly. It takes you a while, or maybe you're wrong about it. And then you can start to produce it more quickly. You can use the word without much thought at all. And then eventually it becomes just a part of you. It just comes out completely naturally as part of chunks. It's just the meaning for the thing that you want to say. But getting to those different levels, especially with the production, you have to, first off, need it at some point and make your brain want to remember, want to use it, need to use it. Because there are a lot of words that even in English that are completely passive. I understand them, but if I try to think of them, it's like, oh, what was that weird way of saying XYZ thing? And so like, I might have to look those up or look at a thesaurus and go, oh yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to say. And so like that process absolutely exists in foreign languages. So it's not just like you have to learn the word better. It's like you have to learn the word now differently. It's new. So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah. I think perhaps I just interpreted the phrase or the question a little bit too literally.
That's
like,
awesome.
I forget everything. It's like, okay, well, you shouldn't be forgetting everything when you try to use it. At least
Forgot my name.
in my experience, like the majority of the words should be there. Because the majority of the words in any given sentence are not that special. There are just like specific things that are really tied to the meaning that you're trying to convey that you need to remember. And there are times when you're just like, oh, I just can't remember like the key word for this sentence. That totally makes sense to me. But if you're trying to speak and like none of the words are coming, that's sort of what I meant of you probably just haven't had enough exposure to the language.
Yeah, so that's fair.
Yeah, production practice is really important. Either doing close cards or reverse production card, or just production cards, which is the reverse of recognition or comprehension cards.
I also recommend just monologuing.
Monologuing works.
You don't have to even record yourself, but I do recommend setting up like your phone camera so you can see yourself sort of like in the mirror, or just use the mirror and talk to yourself for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Talk about your day. Just get practice doing that if you need to.
There's training people to be crazy.
Yeah, just do it on the metro. Just sit there, stare out the window, and talk to yourself in a language that nobody else around you understands. It's a good tip. It is 5.
Oh, it is.
All right, bye.
Good point.
Do you want to do one more question, or
sure? Let's do one to finish it off.
Do you recommend using the IPA in order to improve your accent?
This is your game. You're much more into IPA than I am.
It is a helpful tool, but you do not need to memorize it. It is helpful to be able to see and think about sounds in a bit of isolation, because you can like look at it and go, oh, that is a different sound than we have in Spanish. So if you look at the ah sound in English, you can see it's a literal different character than the ah sound in Spanish. Go, oh, that's why it sounds weird when I say father versus father. And you can look up those sorts of things and understand them in isolation. But even if you know the IPA perfectly, it does not mean that you could just speak any language, that you can perfectly pronounce every language. There's so much more to pronunciation and accent than just the sounds. In fact, I've been doing some research and reading about this, and it seems to be that the actual sounds are not the most important part. It's the way that you say them, the way that you use it. The naturalness is so much more important. There was an interesting study where they had a bunch of people from, I think it was Detroit, and they had a recording from a person from Detroit, but they had half the people listen to the recording, and they said that this is a recording from a Canadian speaker of the language, a Canadian speaker of English, and the other half of the group, they told that they were from Detroit. And they were asked to judge their accent or something like that. And the people who were told that they were Canadian had them like judge them as more foreign, basically. Like just the thought that they were from somewhere else, that they spoke differently, made them sound more foreign. That's not necessarily that naturalness, but like there is so much more to pronunciation and the way that we perceive accent and dialect and all that sort of thing beyond just the sounds. There's also there's tons of research into various aspects of speaking and whatnot. But my recommendation is to dive into the IPA a little bit, learn a bit about the sounds of your target language, but then focus on the actual way that it's spoken. You can watch watch videos of people that are good at speaking and see if you can notice how they use the language, how they change things. Do chorusing, lots of chorusing. Chorusing is really, really good because a hyper fixation on the sounds, just isn't going to do that, right? Basically.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I would think about it is if you look at a song, right? You've got the lyrics, which are the words. You can read the music, like the notes, in order to know how it sounds. But if you've never heard music before, then the notes aren't going to mean anything to you. And if you don't have a lot of experience of connecting the notes that are written to the sounds that they make, you're not going to be able to like read them fluidly and like really understand what they sound like. So the key is, yes, the IPA can give you insight into what sounds exist, but if you don't spend the time actually learning or listening for those sounds, that IPA work is not going to actually matter. You're not going to improve your listening or your speaking or your pronunciation. You have to do the listening is the important part. The IPA is a supplement to making your listening or speaking
They
better.
did specifically ask about improving accent. But yeah, same thing.
Yeah, again, so it'll help you identify what sounds exist in the language, but it's not a supplement, or rather, it's not a replacement for actually practicing the skill and comparing it to the way that people actually speak. So I think chorusing is probably more useful than IPA if you had to choose one or the other.
Yeah, IPA is more like, okay, you're chorusing and you're like, I just can't say this sound. I cannot figure it out. That's where you like dive into the IPA a bit. You go to the Wikipedia article, you look up how to produce that sound, you do some like research onto it, but then you come back to the chorusing and try to actually do it in there. Like there's steps to it.
Kind of sounds like grammar, honestly. It's like you study a little bit up front just to know what sounds are in the language, and then when you're like trying to perfect things, you can use it as a tool for highlighting and explaining like certain aspects of the language that you're struggling with.
I mean, that's kind of our hypothesis, right? That's like 20% study and focus and like learning about things, but then 80% is just like actual exposure to doing it in the real world and listening and understanding and using it.
Yeah.
One last question here that's interesting is from Mohammed and asks, why do you think that I hit the, or why do we think that I hit, good. I'm just going to read it how they wrote it because it's easier. My question is for Ben. Why do you think you hit the plateau, the intermediate plateau at 1,400 hours with Refold, while dreaming Spanish learners at the same number of hours don't seem to get stuck from that? The intermediate plateau doesn't have anything to do with the language. It's basically what happens is that towards the intermediate phase, once you're like getting pretty good, it's really easy to get very comfortable with what you're doing. It's easy to sort of fall into your patterns and routines and not push yourself to learn the next things. And so at around that time with my Czech learning, I just wasn't pushing myself that much. I was watching a ton of free flow, just listening YouTube and still continuing to learn some words, but I wasn't pushing myself beyond. I wasn't pushing myself to improve my speaking anymore, to improve my writing and all these things that I really could. And so when I thought about that and I changed my focus and I basically got up from my slumped position, you can just move on. And dreaming Spanish learners, first off, Spanish is a very different language than Czech. It's just very different. There's a lot more shared words. Whatever. That's a different thing. So you wouldn't expect their intermediate phase to be at the same point anyways. You'd expect a 1,400-hour Spanish learner to be basically functionally fluent. That's our sort of estimate for the entire Spanish learning process. Versus with, yeah, go ahead. You want to say something?
I was also going to say, like, we had a question earlier in this chat about people in Dreaming Spanish, someone in Dreaming Spanish who's at the intermediate level and doesn't feel they can make the jump to advanced. So it does seem like they do actually experience the intermediate plateau. Though I think that we would have to define what the intermediate plateau is, because oftentimes the intermediate plateau is just there's a lot of stuff to learn and you have to do that for a long time. And you may not feel like you're significantly improving during that time because there's just so many things to learn. That might be your definition of the intermediate plateau, or it might be like what you said of you just fall into a comfortable rhythm and don't feel like pushing yourself much further.
Because there is so much to do and learn and whatnot.
Yeah. I'd also say that, the intermediate plateau for the arbitrary levels that Dreaming Spanish has chosen at their intermediate may still be actually substantially below where you were with your Czech at that 1,400 hours. I don't know, because I'm not 100% sure where you were, and I'm not 100% sure how they measure it. But
it's also trying to generalize all Dreaming Spanish learners in one Czech learner, right?
Yeah.
They just apples and oranges.
Yeah. So I don't know how they measure the difficulty of their content, if it's just like a gut check or like a gut feeling, or if they actually like ask people how difficult things are in order to come up with a rating system.
I don't know specifically what testimonials they're referring to with the question, so can't answer that.
Okay.
What areas with Czech grammar do I struggle with speaking, if any? Definitely any. It is there, especially like case endings and consistent. Like there's like certain case structures that are just really hard for me because they're a lot more arbitrary, or they're rarer, right? So like the ones that come after specific prepositions are pretty easy, right? It's like, okay, you just use the dative case here. But like there's certain ones where sometimes it sounds better to use the sixth case versus the first case. And you're like, why? So that's tough. But then also, I think the biggest thing is actually gender, because Czech has a gender nouns. There's 3.5 genders, and it's not like there's no articles to say like la mesa, la puerta, or whatever. You have to first off, like, you can figure it out in like 90% of the cases just based on how the word ends. But then I'm not super used to using the right gender on the other parts of the sentence, right? So the verb has to match the gender, but there's a different one for neuter versus masculine versus feminine, but not always, only sometimes. And then the adjective also has to match. And so I'm definitely making progress there, and I do overgeneralization. So I will often use the right case ending, but for a different gender, and make mistakes like that. But that is the biggest thing. Czech grammar, like there's definitely other things that I mess up, like not using the exact naturalist way to say and if or whatever. But my general use of Czech is pretty natural. It's just it's such a complicated language that there's a bunch of things that I'm still going to be acquiring for a while. I know that I can learn some tricks to be like, okay, I know that I should do this here, but there are definitely still things that are just like really grasping the full case system is going to take me a couple more years, just because it is so, yeah, it's not even close to the subjunctive. It's so much more because every noun and every sentence and everything has to have a case, and it's like, okay, some of them are
And they all have to
super
match.
obvious. Yeah, they have to match. They have to, and some of it's all, like very clear, right? When it's like, okay, the nominative and accusative, sure, I can do that. That's fine. But like when you get into like more complex ones, or there's like, okay, this verb specifically needs to use the seventh case and not the fourth case, even though the preposition that it uses generally takes the fourth case. And so it's like, there's a lot of stuff going on. But
Sounds complicated.
It is, and yeah, I don't know. It's a very interesting language. I definitely like Czech a lot, but I can't imagine if I'd started the grammar first route and like you look at all the different ways to say the. It's like, oh, there's like 75. And you're like, why? Why this? I thought German was crazy with 16. So it's, yeah, I don't know. It seems so overwhelming, but it's such a good language at the same time. I don't know.
Great.
But,
all right. Shall we call it here?
yeah, let's call it here.
Cool. Thanks everybody for attending live. Thanks for the questions. If you've got more questions or questions that we didn't get answered, definitely throw them in the Discord chat, and we'll talk about them next month.
Yeah, when we have this next, we'll see.
Probably in 4 to 6 weeks.
Something like that. Aiming for 10 a month, 10 a year.
10 a year.
Anyways, all right. Thank you for the chat, Ethan. Right. Have a great evening. I'll see you tomorrow in the morning meeting.
Sounds good. Talk to you later.
Bye, everybody. Wait, session false.